I think we've started. I'd love to welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. And I'm Lolly Lewis. I'm the founder of Amateur Music Network, and we're just delighted today to welcome back David Landis, who has been uh, a curator of our workshops. Every so often, he brings in one of his dear friends, and he's has dear friends throughout the music industry. And today we are very lucky that he has brought us Karen Mason. I am so thrilled to meet Karen. Thank you, David. She's just, I think she's just a great bringer of joy. Isn't that one of the Holst
Oh,
movements? But in any event, she's she's going to bring a lot of joy into your life for an hour, and I'm going to let her do it. Thank you both.
Thank you, Lolly. And
thanks,
it
Lolly.
is such a pleasure to be back with the Amateur Music Network and to see some great friends. Thank you all for joining us. What you may or may not know about the network is it really is about bringing amateur musicians like moi together with professionals like Karen, and so that we can learn from each other. And during the pandemic, I really applaud Lolly and Cordy and Danielle and the board of the network, because you have persevered and figured out a way to connect with people throughout America, not just in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're really excited today because we're kind of pushing the envelope here beyond classical music to really incorporate Broadway and cabaret. And I've got to say, I've known this woman for a years. And she has starred on Broadway in Sunset Boulevard, in Hairspray, in Mamma Mia. She opened Don't Tell Mama's Club in New York. She's been out here for Bay Area Cabaret, performed at Live at the Arinda, and also at Feinstein's. And it is my great honor and privilege to introduce my friend and Broadway star, Karen Mason.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, David. That's so sweet. Thank you.
It's really great to have you here. And Karen, you're in New York, right?
I am actually Jackson Heights, New York. I'm a
Oh,
Queens resident.
because, you got your start with Queens, you got to go back, right? So anyway, we're going to get started here, and it's going to be very loose, just so everybody knows. If you have a question, put it in the chat, and we'll leave time at the end so that Karen can answer some questions from the audience. She's also going to sing us a little song at the end, so stay tuned. And I want to go back. You're from Chicago, like I am, and
I am.
and tell us a little bit. There are a lot of big stars, especially cabaret stars, that started in Chicago. And what was life like in Chicago, and how did you go from there to New York?
Well, in reality, I was born in New Orleans.
Oh, right,
And
right.
yeah, and my dad just kept getting transferred, so we ended up in Chicago, and that's where I met Brian Lasser, who was the gentleman I worked with for 16 years, who was my first music director. I was doing a lot of community theater out in the suburbs where I lived, and when I met Brian at a restaurant called Lawrence of Oregano,
Okay, you got to
Brian
say that again.
Lawrence of Oregano. It was an Italian restaurant, and they had singing waiters and waitresses. It was actually really fun. And Brian was the music director for all these singing waiters and waitresses. When they hired me, I was the only one they didn't hire as a waiter or a waitress because I had no skill. But they wanted to hire me because of the singing. So um, they hired me as a receptionist, and I got to see people. But actually, they took that job away from me too because I didn't know what I was doing. So I had most of the waitresses ready to kill me. But I met Brian there, and the second I met him, I knew that that was a person I was going to attach my wagon to. and not let him out of my sight. There was, you meet those people along the way that you just know that, well, I've always thought that we knew each other in another lifetime, that there was just some immediate connection. And he said I was his muse. I mean, certainly he was my mentor and my collaborator, and my best friend. And we started doing actually parties, cocktail parties, because Brian would get hired and he'd say, could I bring somebody along to sing? And they'd say, sure, but we're not giving you any more money. And so we didn't care. We were just happy to be with each other and making music. And we started doing gay clubs. The first one we did was called La Pub. And at La Pub, we were doing 2 nights a week. And then we started doing 4 nights a week. And then we were doing 5 nights a week. And building up our, not only the musical catalog that we were doing, but also our audience. And within maybe 7 months of, I don't even know if it was that long actually, it might have been a lot less, of being at La Pub, as happenstance, as would happen, the gentleman who was the manager at La Pub became the manager of this big place across the street that was going to open called Park West. And the Park West was a huge, well, David, it was a beautiful concert place. Yes. And so we had our first concert there. I mean, nobody's. And then we're doing a concert at Park West. And God love Brian's mom and family, because his mom stood on street corners and handed out flyers. And we thought nobody was going to be there but our family, but we sold it out. And what was interesting is they offered us 90% of the gate.
Wow.
And so we had a really great night. And we thought, if this is show business, I'm in. Unfortunately, they got wise right after that. Yes. And, it went down to what it is now, normally every places.
It's interesting because I am pretty sure I saw that Park West show, but where I really remember you from is Center Stage.
Oh.
A big gay disco and a cabaret downstairs. And remind me if I'm wrong, but I think the shows were 11 p.m., 1 a.m., and 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
How did you do that?
I was young. I couldn't do that now. I can hardly stay up for the 11. But, 11, 1, and 3 a.m. shows. And what was really fascinating is that the 3 a.m. shows, that was what, the 80s?
Yeah.
No, 70s.
No, 70s. It was the 70s.
It was the 70s.
Yeah.
70s, yeah. And you got all the people who couldn't find somebody to go home with at the 3 a.m. show. So people were kind of bitter and angry. And the entire set was all depressing ballads.
And you sang I Don't Remember Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. As we only did anger and ballads. That was what we did at 3 a.m. It was hysterical. But then we'd go out for breakfast afterwards and go to Mel Marcon's for breakfast and get home, and then start it all over again. Those were really fun days, though, because what was great about it is we were just finding out who we were. So no matter what we did, it was. I love that time when making mistakes is just part of it.
Yes.
As opposed to feeling like, now you have to, every moment has to be so right. And there's something kind of freeing and wild and about doing what you want and trying anything.
And don't you think that's partly why Brian was so brilliant, and also because you were with him, the two of you were brilliant. I've never heard an arranger like Brian Lasser. The unexpected turns of phrase, the unexpected harmonies, the way he changes a tune that you thought you knew and maybe just slows it down. I've never heard anything quite like that.
Yeah, he was very influenced by oh shoot, now I can't remember his name. Who was the arranger for Barbra Streisand, who did all of her early? Oh my God, he was so brilliant.
Lolly will tell us here because she knows all.
Lolly?
And what? Google knows it.
Peter Matz.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was Peter Matz.
Yeah.
He was very influenced by Peter Matz and kind of took it and then ran with it. And listen, the stuff you hear now that I still do, that Brian arranged, Something's Coming and Almost Like Being in Love, and so many of them are still so brilliant. But there was an awful lot that was really sad. We did I've often told the story about he did an arrangement of a Stevie Wonder song, and Brian went to a school that was it was the south side of Chicago, so it was a heavily black neighborhood, and it was Jewish and then it became black neighborhood. So Brian had he had this great music around him. And then he met me, the white girl from the suburbs, and he kept trying to make me hipper. And he did this one arrangement of a song that Stevie Wonder wrote called Ordinary Pain. And it was truly sad because I tried my best. I really did. I gave everything my best shot, but I was just bad. People were actually in pain listening to that song. And so, but that was part of the experimentation. And,
right.
How do you know who you are until you try everything?
Absolutely. So from Chicago, when was it that you decided you wanted to leave and go to New York? Was that you and Brian together migrate to New York?
Yeah. Both of us had, we're both theater kids, so I think we both thought in terms of New York, but we weren't discarding the idea of LA. But we had done our maybe fifth concert at Park West, and listen, it was that 70s time in cabaret. Everything was just kind of bubbling up. It was really, even though the 60s had a lot of cabarets in New York and Chicago, in the 70s it was really it was kind of a lovely time to be part of that. And we were all very supportive of each other, but Brian and I kind of thought, okay, we've done our, how many concerts, and we can't seem to get anybody to give us the recording contract or the pathway to what we want. Fine, if they're not coming to us, we'll go to them. So do we go to Los Angeles or New York? And both of us really wanted to be where theater was. I think that's where our heart started. And so it was New York. And we had our first job at a place called The Ballroom, which was at that time, it was down in Soho. And we had one night. We got a great review. And we thought, okay, well, that was easy. let's just move there. And so we did. That was in 77, 78, and we moved the following year. And so it was a long time. I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were one of the first people, you were the headliner to open Don't Tell Mamas in New York, right?
Well, I shared that with Nancy Lamott.
Oh, Nancy, who was from San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah,
Actually, I think she was born in Michigan.
Yes,
and then,
right.
But she was, it was kind of like me in Chicago.
Right. She was well known here. And so when did you do that with Nancy?
That was 1983.
Okay.
Oh my God, Tony Ariglio says Bowl
I-
Tax. That was a club. Yow.
What was that?
I don't even know where it was, but was that in New York, Tony? Yeah, it was a club, one of those many that I played that came and went. But in 1983, and when Brian and I moved to New York, we worked at a place called the Duplex.
Oh, yeah.
And it was when it was on the other side of 7th Avenue, for those who know New York. And it was this tiny little hole in the wall, seated 60 upstairs, if you were lucky. And it seemed like the place to be. And so it had just been bought by these two guys from Ohio. And we did every Saturday for 3 years.
Wow.
And every Saturday that we were in New York, a lot of times we would go back to Chicago to make money to be able to come back to New York and live. Because, listen, you 60 people, you better be charging them a lot, but nobody was. And so it was like a $5 cover, so you made no money. But we'd go back to Chicago, and Irv and Rob, who owned the Duplex, decided they bought another space up in the theater district, and asked if we would open it with Nancy. And it like, wait, let me think about that. Okay. So it was Nancy Lamont with Rick Jensen, and me and Brian, and we alternated. It was like 8, and I'll do the 10:30, and then I'll do the 8, so it was like that for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it was very exciting. That time, I actually went back to Don't Tell Mama in 2015. It was the 32nd anniversary of opening the space, and did a show about my life since then. It was really kind of fun, very, very sweet to do that show.
It's a very special place, the back room, but then even like Sean and I, when we go to New York, we like going there. I think we went with my sister Kate, who's on the call. You go after a show and there are people from different casts who show up and sing, and
Yeah.
it's really Broadway. And I have to say, that's the one thing that I think you really embody, Karen, is you've got that Broadway quality. And doing all the cabaret shows was great, but then you did move to Broadway, where you were in Sunset Boulevard and Mamma Mia and Hairspray.
Yeah.
And I want the juicy stories. So
I know you do. And
you may not be able to name names, but you can still make it juicy, I'm sure.
What show would you like some juice about?
Oh, you pick your choice.
Well, I don't know what juicy means. It's like, okay, so my first show was Play Me a Country Song, which closed on opening night.
Oh, great.
That was my very first show. I was so excited about it. But the people who wrote it, it was actually written by, the music was by Harry Manfredini, who wrote the soundtrack to Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, an easy jump to Broadway. But I loved the score. I thought it was kind of sweet and kind of fun. But their book was odd and not great. And it was kind of a big old mess. And they took us out on the Circle Line tour for our opening night party. And because they didn't want us to read the reviews. At that time, there were no phones. It was 84, 83. And yeah, so they took us out on the Circle Line tour and got everybody drunk. And then as we got off the boat, told us that we could come by tomorrow to pick up all of our stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, happy opening.
Yeah.
So that was our opening night. During that, I actually got cast in Torch Song Trilogy,
Oh.
Harvey Firestein's piece, which was moving from off-Broadway to Broadway.
Yeah.
So I got cast as the Torch singer, Lady Blues. But because I was so important to Play Me a Country Song, they wouldn't let me out of my contract. I've been bitter about that for years. But after that, then I did a lot of Brian and I were doing a lot of stuff. And what was after that? Then the next thing after that was Jerome Robbins Broadway.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. That must have been fun.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. 62 people in that cast.
Wow.
And which of all were dancers except for me. And I took over for Debbie Shapiro Gravitt, who had opened the show and done all the workshops and stuff. And I'm still friends. As a matter of fact, we all had a 30-year reunion, 30 years from the opening of Jerome Robbins. Very recently. It was amazing. It was 30 years from the opening of Jerome Robbins, 30 years from the opening of And the World Goes Round. And still keep in touch with those people. It's a great group of people.
So what was it like working with Jerry? Because I've heard he's demanding.
Well, mercifully, I did not, because I was taking over for Debbie.
Oh, okay. All
yeah,
right.
so I worked with the dance
captains. Did you meet him or not? You didn't meet him.
Here was how I met him. He came to the show, and I was told, you'll know when Jerry comes. And I said, I could just feel myself getting nauseous. So I said, I don't want to know. So if you would do me the favor of not telling me when Jerry is here. And, actors are the worst at keeping secrets, right?
Right.
So that night, this is what I heard backstage. Jerry Robbins. Well, duh. I mean, even I can guess. Oh my God, he's here. And you look out in the audience, and he was sitting in. He always had the same seats.
Yeah.
With glasses reflecting the lights. Bald head, like sitting right there. And he came up to me afterwards, and everybody was waiting on stage. And he came up to me and he said, "It's nice to meet you." And I thought,
wow.
I seriously was so disappointed. I thought, wow, I must have been really bad. I'm so sorry. I was so horrible. And it turns out that, if I had been horrible, I would have been, I would have been gone or back in rehearsal. So he liked me. It's just.
So that was a good sign.
That was the imprimatur from,
yeah. All right. What was it like working with Glenn Close for Sunset Boulevard? Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I have to say, during the time, it was really hard because I'm like so frickin' perky.
Yeah.
And I'm a very excited person. I like to be happy about things.
Yeah.
And not everybody reads that as charming. And the first time I went up to Glenn, we were at rehearsal in Los Angeles. And my audition, okay, so when I auditioned for it in New York, I thought, oh, of course I'm auditioning for Norma Desmond. I thought, of course I was. And so I went to my audition. I was doing Amanda McBroom's show at the time out at the Goodspeed Opera House. And you have to go, I had to come into town and then go back out to Goodspeed. And so I learned the song. But those moments when you're right on the spot. And I started, they said, Trevor came up and talked to me and said, we're so happy you're here, blah, blah, blah. Singing. I said, yes, thank you very much. I motioned to the pianist. This is in a Broadway house. I'm on a Broadway stage looking out, darkness, but knowing that there's all these big honchos out there. And so I start my audition. It was like, with one look. I had no idea what the next line was.
Oh, no.
I could not remember it.
Oh my God.
So there was this very long pause. And I hear from the back of the theater, and I learned later it was Sir Andrew, Lord Andrew. I can break your heart. Thank you. Let me start again. So that was my audition. And I got the gig. So, you know, I must have been very intense after that. And they were perhaps a little scared of me. But Glenn, you know, I went up to her the first day that I was there to watch her. And my job as a standby was to just sit, take notes, watch, see what she does. I was the only one in the room who was not actively working. It's a very strange dynamic. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was kind of okay with it until her focus was so, you know, steely. It was so intense that I really did get the feeling that nobody was paying attention to me at all. Not that I need to have people paying attention to me, but I didn't like that feeling of being on the outside. And I never said hello to me. Nobody did. Nobody said hello to me except for George and Alan said hello to me in the morning.
And coming from Chicago, where everybody's so friendly.
Oh my God, it was torture. So I spent a lot of time crying, you know, thinking, why am I here? What am I doing? I made friends, but I mean, I'm out in Los Angeles by myself, you know, and I don't really know anybody in the cast and feeling very alone. And the first day that I've watched now, and I'm trying to pay attention. When Trevor talks to her, it's always with his back to me. So I'm missing all of these things. You know, it's a very private event that I'm kind of like watching, but not really being able to actively listen or participate or hear anything. Basically, I was just watching and
You're on the outskirts.
Right, right. Yeah. And so I'm trying to write down all of the blocking backwards because I'm watching her do it. And the first day that we had a rehearsal with the company, and it was the first time she was going to be singing in front of the company. So yes, now I understand. There were great nerves, of course. But, you know, I was still feeling like, you know, sad Sally. And she, when she walked into the room, she came over to me and asked me if I would hold her dog.
Oh, God.
And you know, like being a Midwesterner that I am, I went, sure. Yeah, not a problem. And then she walked away, and I thought, wait a minute. My righteous indignation came out. And I was, but, you know, somebody else said to me, listen, always the voices from outside said, you know, she felt safe with you.
Right, she did.
And so listen, Glenn was very kind to me. I don't understand that. I'd never been around a star of that caliber.
Yeah.
And it's different.
It is
because
different.
They have to be different.
Yeah.
You know, they have to have their blinders on and get stuff done, or else everybody would be grabbing at them and taking.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I didn't understand it at the time. Now, you know, in many years in retrospect, I understand and, you know, am a little calmer about myself. But the first time I went on, she left me a beautiful note. I still have it, and a beautiful flower,
Wow.
and said, enjoy, playing Norma. She's lots of fun. Just have a great time.
Isn't
And
that nice?
yeah,
That's
it
really
was very
great.
sweet. It was very sweet.
So we have a question from Cordy, I think. She said her German husband is totally addicted to ABBA. So, and one of my favorite songs is Does Your Mother Know? And which I've never told you. So,
No.
yeah, so let's talk a little bit about ABBA and Mamma Mia. And that role must have been the most fun to play.
It was, because I had four beautiful boys dancing around me. Four beautiful, young, gorgeous dancers. And I had somebody who was this, Mark Price, who is, I think, a comic genius, seducing me for the role, for the song.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. It really was. I was 50 when I had just turned 50 when I got Mamma Mia. So I started doing leg lifts the second I got the role.
I'm sure you did. So, since there are a lot of musicians on this call, talk a little bit about, how do you sing and be comedic? That takes a certain kind of talent. It's not just the good singing, it's the timing, it's all of that. What's the technique? How do you make that happen?
Well, I don't know if the technique is any different as far as singing. I think, you approach. I always, and perhaps it's my theatrical background, but I approach every song as an acting piece, as an actor. To me, it's not, the sound is merely a conduit to express myself. It's the soundtrack that enables me to express myself. And so I approached, Does Your Mother Know? Any of those ABBA songs. And pop music is a little different, It's pop because you have a track, you have you really have to just kind of fit on that tread. But the good thing about working on that show is they did give us an awful lot of freedom to make those songs acting pieces. So, Does Your Mother Know? I mean, it couldn't have been more spot on. I was singing it to a young guy who was trying to pick me up, and I'm saying, Does your mother know? Well, you're so hot. Yeah, and so it kind of just took care of itself. But I enjoy that type of singing. My sister enjoys singing with groups. My younger sister, and my older sister does too. Being the middle child that I am not as good at singing with groups as singing by myself and making it work.
So another question, because you've done Broadway and theater and cabaret, but you've also sung with symphony orchestras. So does that require a different kind of projection or a different kind of training or a different kind of delivery?
No, I mean, most of these are all done with microphones. And so it's, theater, I think, is probably the most challenging because you can't hear yourself. I've done so many nightclubs and cabarets and concerts, and you do hear your voice coming back at you. So you hear it over. The thing about microphones that's interesting is that a mic kind of takes away that ability. As a singer, you get that sensation. If you don't have anything in front of you, you feel your voice in a different way. You feel, you can hear it, you can feel it. With the microphone right in front of you robs you of that sensation. So you do have to have something sending back your voice to you. And doing orchestral, symphony dates, I actually I love doing them. The last one I did was it was Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall. I have to say that was the most fun I've ever had because those orchestrations are so killer. And I grew up with listening to that, that Come Rain or Come Shine with the bongos. I mean,
I know.
I was in heaven.
I know.
Yeah.
What is it like though when you're used to singing cabaret and it's maybe a piano or maybe a trio, and then you go on stage with a full symphony orchestra? That must be glorious.
Oh, it's heaven. It's heaven to feel all of that. I mean, I love that sensation, It does it for me. On the other hand, I love just singing with a piano because I work with a guy who's, got very wide hands. And so he can play.
And you know what that means.
I'm not sure David Sotana. He's got a great span, so he sounds like an orchestra. And, he doesn't, he stays out of my way when I'm singing, but there's a communication there. And that to me is the most fun, is that communication. It's not that the singing changes, it's that although you do, when you're singing with an orchestra, you do have to be very careful not to, blow it out because you get so excited about, especially those big belt notes that, just like, they're so much fun.
So you hinted at talking about your current music director, Chris Denny. Why don't we take a couple of minutes? Talk to us about him, because you had the great pleasure of working with Brian Lasser. Brian, for those of you who don't know, passed away from AIDS a long time ago. And then you were lucky enough to find Chris Denny. And what has that relationship been like for you, Karen?
What's interesting about the relationship with Chris is, I've worked with him since 1992. That was our first job together. Brian died in 92. So Chris, there was an overlapping. When Brian got sick in 89 going into 90, it was hard because I never imagined myself without him. We were working all the time. And so here, my identity was so totally aligned with Brian's that when he died, or even when he got sick, listen, not that that was the first consideration, but over a period of time, it was like, wow, what's going to happen now? When I realized that there were going to be times he couldn't play because he was sick, it was hard. And Chris stepped in. Chris, I worked.
Where did you meet him?
Well, Chris, I met him. He invited me to do this thing that was during that late 80s, early 90s, a thing called Hearts and Music. That was an organization that was going to the hospitals to perform for AIDS patients. And, because we were all doing benefits to raise money, but all of the people in the hospital weren't hearing all of this music that was being done for them. So Chris asked me if I would come and do one. He admired Brian's work and had seen us and enjoyed our work. And Hearts and Voices, thank you, Marianne. And he had seen me and invited me to do one of them with him. He was the music director for one of them, and so I went and did it. And I thought it was easy working with Chris. He's a great player, but he's also a great accompanist, and that's a totally different animal.
Yes. It is.
Somebody who is a collaborator with you and supportive of you, as opposed to everybody trying to be the shining star. It's a very different thing. And but that our relationship he played for me a few times, but it really wasn't cemented until I got back from Los Angeles, doing Sunset Boulevard, and started working with him. And, you know, we've grown with each other. At that point, I had a much better sense of who I was after working with Brian for 16 years. So I didn't come into it with the same naivete, the same, I knew what I wanted. Now, the good thing is, Chris and Barry Kleinbort, my director, they push me in directions that I am not, you know, I argue all the time with them about it, going, you know, that's not for me, that's not for me.
You argue? I can't imagine.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, but usually they're right if I just trust, you know, and try it. And with Chris, he's, you know, we've learned he played a lot more when we started. And now he knows where to play and then stay away from things. And his timing is so great. His comedic timing. See, this is another thing. It's like musicians. The musicians, a great accompanist can be funny and heartfelt and sad and do all of that to support you, because you have to know when to have music, when to not have music, when to, you know, make it build for the singer and disappear for that punchline.
Right.
And yeah, Chris he calls me his little sister, even though I'm vastly older than he is. But
well, speaking of Chris, I hear you have a little present for our audience.
Oh,
Isn't this Chris's arrangement, by the way?
it is, as a matter of fact. We did it for when we went over to Barcelona and did a job. And yeah,
Didn't you do this also for the Kennedy Center?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Because
Well,
I have that
once I
YouTube.
learn it, David.
You're going to hear it.
Over and over and over again.
So with that, I would like to have our dear Karen sing us a little song, and then we'll open it up to questions. So if you
Okay.
have any more questions, please put them in the chat. But Karen, take it away, please.
Hopefully this will work.
A song that I think everybody knows, by the way.
There we go. When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic lane. When all the clouds darken up the skyways, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't Nice.
Brava, brava. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, and I did.
I would be
I'm so
disappointed if
sorry.
you didn't.
Oh my God. Lolly, can we unmute everybody so they can clap or not?
Oh,
We're all going to clap.
oh, thank you.
Clapping here.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful. The way that builds, and it's so small and intimate, and then it just blossoms at the very end. It gives me goosebumps
Yeah.
every time. It is so gorgeous.
Well,
So,
thank you. I will pass that on to Chris.
yeah,
Thank you
please
so
do.
much, Karen. That was really,
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 Oh,
really
thank
stunning.
you.
And
Thank
so when
you.
are we going to see you again in San Francisco? Sometime soon, I hope.
Well, things are starting to open up. I have a couple of jobs coming up around here, and I have my first is at a funeral home, and here in New York called Frank Campbell. It's funny. It's where Judy Garland actually had her the funeral here in New York was at Frank Campbell. It's very old, like the 1800s. And I guess they've done a concert series for the past 3 years and decided they wanted to do Broadway. So I got a phone call about it, and I said it was so weird. At first I thought, no. But then I thought, you have to, Karen Eileen. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Judy Garland. Hey, come on, right?
So there in the Bucks County Playhouse and
Oh, great.
Forestburg Playhouse, a lot of outdoor things. And so, yeah, things are starting to open up. So, I feel very optimistic about things.
Well, we
now.
have Marilyn Levinson, and we have Tony, and we have Annette, and we have Michael here. So
Yay, I'm available.
I know when things open up. We have a question from the famous Sean Dowdle.
Oh.
And the question is, what is the next role you would like to play on Broadway? Is
Let's-
Rebecca ever going to get revived?
I doubt it.
No.
I doubt it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But who knows? You listen. Who knows? I would love to do the role that I did in Chasing Rainbows. I would love for that to be on Broadway. And I think it would be a good fit because it's got great, I think when Broadway starts opening up, I think those fun, bubbly musicals
Yeah.
are going to be the ones that people want to go see. And it's got great tap dancing and great music. It's all, Judy Garland before, all of that music from the 20s and 30s. Judy Garland before Wizard of Oz. And so it's really fun. It's a really great, beautiful show. And boy, I'd like that to be the next role I play on Broadway.
Well, that's it. That would be good.
Yeah, I'm thinking anything that's a featured role that I show up in the second act and steal the show. That that sounds really good to me.
Now, we haven't talked about your lovely husband, who is a very talented record producer and a composer. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that wonderful song, It's About Time, that he wrote, which is the title of your CD, right?
The last CD. Yeah, we're actually working on a new CD.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
hopefully that'll be like with the next, 8 months. Yeah, he wrote the song. It was when marriage equality opened up in New York. And when it passed, when, it seems like 100 years ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when it passed in New York and people were starting to have weddings, I got hired. And so these were friends who I had known through coming to see us in places in New York, cabarets in New York. And they hired me, and we went out to dinner with them they wanted to tell me the songs they wanted me to sing at their wedding. And as we were walking away, I said to Paul, you're always talking about not having, sometimes inspirations to write a song. This is a perfect one. You've got these two guys who are getting married. They love each other. Write a song. And he paid attention to me. And within that following 4 days, he was on the subway and wrote the hook, which is, it's about love. It's about love. It's about life. It's about time. And sent it to Shelley Markham, who is you probably know him from playing for Andre Marcovici all these years,
Right.
And many other people. And Shelley wrote this great melody, and the two of them worked together so well on this. And when Paul played it for me, I said, it's absolutely perfect. It's perfect. Because I just love that the line, it's about time, has so many different meanings. It's, it's about frickin' time is what I should have been singing. But it's about time. It's about the time we live in. It's about love. It's only about love. Only about love and life. And, and so when he played it for me, I sang it for Perry and Peter at their wedding. And they were blown away. They were so moved by that beautiful song to them.
It's one of the most beautiful pieces you've ever recorded. And please,
thank you.
know how much we love him. Let's see, we have from Maryland, sitting here listening to your beautiful voice. I was trying to think of my favorite song. It's a tie between Winter Takes It All and every Christmas song you sing.
Wow, that's all over the place, Marilyn.
Yeah. Is there a song that you think of as your signature song or favorite song to sing?
I'd say signature song. Wow. I don't know. I'd say probably It's About Time would be that right now during this time period, just because it's the newest one that we've done. I've never thought about having a signature song. I don't know. I guess I don't have a signature song. My favorite song to sing is I love doing Almost Like Being in Love. I love singing Over the Rainbow. And The Man That Got Away.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an arrangement that Chris, and every time we do this arrangement, it just makes me happy. It's such a visceral reaction. You singers, you feel it when you sing. There's this energy, that life that you feel. And it's the arrangement he did of Pick Yourself Up that is so much fun to sing and just so silly and so wonderful. And I think I'm going to have to get myself a signature song.
I think you are. You are. Lolly says she has a technical singer question.
Okay.
I'm just curious because, and partly it's the wonderful Midwest accent. You have beautiful R's, and you really let it, let it take over your
She lets it
mouth.
rip.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. But I'm just curious whether you even think about it or if it's just a natural thing that happens because you're very much in control of that difference between the the voice that's very much light and in the head and not at all um, about the mouth, and then you slip into pronouncing words very, very um, uh, strongly with, and it's hard for me to describe. You probably could describe it better, but just that sense of control over being able to really deliver the spoken word in a song and also have the spinning beautiful sound of your upper register, which is
Oh,
so
thank you.
clear and lovely. And I just wonder, was this something that you had coaching for? Is it a natural thing? Do you even think about it? For me, it's just really wonderful to listen to that.
Well, thank you very much. I work very hard at that, to be honest. It perhaps at some point in my life was a natural thing, um, but many ships have sailed since that happened, and so you have to keep. I listen. I still have voice teachers. I have like three on a Rolodex that when I can get them in a room or on a Zoom now. Because as you get older, stuff happens and it shifts around and stuff doesn't operate the same way that you would like it to. My R's are not always my friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does get in the way sometimes of it. What it does is it'll take me out of that beautiful spinning place. And because I've done it for so long, I think it just it kind of like knows to go back, or if I hear it, then it kind of goes back. It never travels too far from that spinning place, or at least I try not to get it to travel too far from that. But I work very hard at it. I like the articulation part of it,
I
Yeah,
do too, and I feel like it. I just feel like the sound of the spoken voice is so integrated that it just adds character.
It does. It really defines who you are. You don't sing like a lot of other cabaret artists sing. You sing like yourself, not this sort of English pronunciation or whatever. And I love that, coming from Chicago, it sounds normal to me.
Yeah, that's right. She's one of us.
Right.
Well,
Hey,
I think the luxury was that, and I'll make this brief, was that when Brian and I first started, he was a Midwesterner too, and we just wanted to be heard. We just wanted to be, and if I'm going to learn something, I'm going to make sure you understand every word I am saying. If I'm going to go through the torture of trying to fit it into my voice, then I'm going to make sure that you know what I'm saying. And, I think starting out doing cabarets, because we didn't have people say, no, you can't do that. On a theatrical stage, you're going to get lost. I had a microphone right here, so I could, keep it small, even when I was getting big, I could keep it relatively small. And listen, sometimes it gets in my way and sometimes I really have to be, because it'll affect my pitch, especially the R's. Yeah. So I work at trying to not have it screw up what I'm trying to do.
There's one final question I'll pose to you from Tony, because you've known Tony since your days in New York together.
Yes.
Tony Aurelio, who's on the call, had his own PR agency representing cabaret artists and theater artists in New York for many years. And he wanted to know a little bit more about And the World Goes Round. Can you comment about that?
Sure. What do you want to know?
Now, what do you want to know, Tony?
Yeah. Well, listen, we did it off Broadway at the place called the Whole Theater originally, and it was oh shoot, what's her name? Paige O'Hara was in it originally, and Brent Barrett, and it was great. It was done at the Whole Theater, which is Olympia Dukakis's theater out in Jersey. It went great, but they constantly changed songs. It was always being worked on because they had an incredible, extraordinary catalog of music from Kander and Ebb, who are around, by the way, and just, you're in awe of being around John Kander and Fred Ebb, and they're just, John is the sweetest man alive, and Fred was just a pisser. He was just a great guy. He was so funny, and they were always changing, always doing stuff. That we had so many different opening numbers that you'd try to learn it for the next day and bring it in, but it didn't always happen that way. But the time we moved to the when we got to off Broadway at the West Side Theater, we were still making changes, because then they added 2 new people. Paige had gotten the movie Disney's Beauty and the Beast, and Brent had a billion other things that were happening, so it became Bob Cuccioli and Brenda Presley. And so we had to, fashion it for them. It was a hard show to do.
Yeah.
I sound like I'm whining all the time, but it was a very hard show to do because it never stopped for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And everybody, there were only a few times in the show that you weren't on stage doing something. The music was phenomenal. The West Side Theater has, we were in the upper theater, and so to go from the dressing rooms to the theater, you had to go up a circular staircase, which for anyone who has ever taken a circular staircase many times, and for a singer, it's especially crappy because it just throws everything off. But that show, I loved doing that show, and was exhausted.
The music is some of the best. Like who doesn't love Kander and Ebb? I think they are, a consummate Broadway artists, consummate. So
yeah, I mean and for the 5 people that were on that stage, everything was, really fashioned to them. I mean, I got to sing Colored Lights was my first solo, and I mean that was such a gift to be given that. There were times where it was a small theater, and so things would go wrong, and on opening night I fell off my skates, and that was the end of Act 1, and yeah, I fell flat on my back, and I could feel myself going. I was on the edge, and Bob Cuccioli and I were the worst skaters, and why they put us next to each other, I do not know. But Bob started to go down, and I started to go down, and he caught himself. I went flat on my back, and my friend Jimmy Walton, he says there was a hush, in the audience, and then suddenly you hear this one little voice go, "Help! I've fallen and I can't get up." It's like the audience starts laughing. It was a perfect way to break that tension.
Yes, and actually a perfect way for us to wrap.
Oh no!
Can you believe it's been an hour? I can't believe it. Karen, it is such fun talking to you. You're so talented. You have
Thank you.
friends on the West Coast here, and we really love you. We can't wait to see you in person. I want
Oh,
to,
me too.
I know. And I want to thank everybody on this call for supporting cabaret, for supporting theater, and for supporting the Amateur Music Network, because they're a great volunteer organization that is trying to really help keep music alive with amateurs and professionals. So do whatever you can to help the Amateur
Thank you.
Music Network. Lolly, thank you.
Thank you, David.
We love
Thank
you.
so
Thank
much.
you, everybody, for joining us today.
Karen, it's really
Rita.
been great.
Hi, Rita.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
This was fun.
It was
Bye-bye,
really fun.
everyone.
Thank you.